Good morning and welcome to Breathe Through It with Monique Pressley. I am your host, Monique Pressley. I'm thankful as always for you tuning in and joining us. We have an action-packed show for you today, but before we get to any of it, I just want to say again, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you're spending your week being thankful for all of your blessings, for everything that God's done for you. And with every prayer request on your heart, you can come to the breathing room, to our show each day to get a breath of fresh air. We're bringing you information and inspiration so that you can breathe better through life. If you've been listening to the broadcast for any period of time, then you know that Fridays we call Freedom Friday. Why? Because in the breathing room we learned that if you are not economically free, emotionally free, physically free, and spiritually free, you've got to have all four of them going at the same time. And if you're lacking in any one area, then you're not accessing the freedom that God has for you. And we want to help you to get there. The guest that I have on today is a man who has been on the freedom wall for a long time. I'm thankful that I've had an opportunity to see up close and personal the kind of hard work that he's doing for all of us, not just for one individual client or another one, but for the cause of justice around the world. We are bringing into the breathing room today Attorney Benjamin Crump. He's managing partner of Parks and Crump. He is the former lead counsel for the Trayvon Martin family. He's represented all kinds of families who have been in adverse situations where they found that at the hands of law enforcement or at the hands of someone pretending to be law enforcement, that they've had a loss in their lives. He's a personal injury lawyer par excellence, and he is a freedom fighter. This morning, it's my pleasure to welcome to the breathing room Attorney Benjamin Crump. Welcome, Ben.
Hey, thank you so much, Monique, and thank you for that gracious introduction. And I love what you're doing with helping people all across the country, your audience, breathe through it, because that's what we have to do more than ever this morning after the aftermath of Ferguson. And like all your audience, you helped me breathe through it with being so inspirational.
Well, thank you so much, Ben. We really do. I spend day after day telling people to take a deep breath, to take one day at a time, to tap into the Spirit of God and all of these things. And I have to admit, it's been a hard sell this past week, Ben. We've been through some tough times. People are seeing some hard days, and everybody is feeling it. It's not just the people who are in Ferguson, but as we hear the news, as we're watching on TV, as we're trying to explain it to our children, it is very tough to take. So I'm hoping through the course of the time that you have with me, I know you're a busy man, so I'm not going to pull on you too much, but I'm hoping we can just dissect some of this, figure out where we are, and get some action items. So first, I want to say, in case there's anybody listening who doesn't know, that a few months ago on August 9th, an unarmed teenage boy, Michael Brown, was shot and killed in the middle of the street in Ferguson, Missouri by a police officer, Darren Wilson. That this exchange started with some words about the fact that Michael Brown and his friend Dorian were walking in the street, and those words within 90 seconds turned into this police officer shooting multiple times and fatally wounding Michael Brown just days after he had graduated from high school and was looking forward to going to college. So from everything that has ensued from then, we have seen this town turned upside down, this country and the world, because the world has been watching these events. Now, we want to say to the family of Michael Brown, to his mother, to Leslie McSpadden, to his father, Michael Brown Sr., to extended family and friends, that we express deepest sympathy for their loss. And Ben, thanks to you, I've had an opportunity to meet the Brown family, and I just want to say on the air, they are some of the kindest, most gracious, just gentle-natured, kind-hearted, open people that I have had the opportunity to meet. And for them to be going through everything they were going through and still to have a smile, to have a hug, to take the time to talk, just speaks to their character. So whatever people are seeing on TV with little snippets is not the story. Ben, how's the family doing?
They're doing as well as can be expected, Monique, and remember, this has only been 3 months for them that they have had to lose their child, and then lose them in such an unspeakable manner. And then on top of all of that, they haven't had the opportunity to grieve. They've been having to try to put on this very public front to get simple justice, to be model citizens of how to try to grieve, and these are just ordinary people doing the best they can. So we really should be praying for them, because nobody knows how they would handle this if somebody kills your child in broad daylight. They crucify his character, they demonize him, and quite literally, Monique, we talk about demonizing, and we talked about it with all these other black children who they killed, Trayvon and others. But this, and we hope to get to the grand jury transcript where this police officer actually said he looked like a demon, which was so unbelievable to me. So they're dealing with all of this here, Monique. And on top of that, they are trying to deal with Thanksgiving with their other children and to explain why Mike is not at the Thanksgiving table, and then this decision that the killer of their child isn't even going to face trial. It is just an emotional overload on them. And Leslie and Michael, they are trying to do as best they can. So you all please keep them in your prayers. Every day when I talk to them, I first start the conversation, I can't imagine what you're going through, but this is what we're going to try to have you do today if you can. We're going to do this Today Show interview. We're going to do this Nightline interview. And, you know, you're asking them to do this, and they're still dealing with the fact that I just had to explain to my daughter that her brother is gone, and he's not coming back. So that's what I mean when I said it was so encouraging to hear you talk at the beginning of your program. Breathe through it. And I'm going to share that with Leslie and Mike, that we just have to breathe through it one day at a time.
Well, and Ben, I appreciate you and just giving me an opportunity to meet with them and to try to weigh in and help where I can through this show, because, you know, that really sometimes is all there is to it. Some things we're not going to get over them. All we can do is get through them. All we can do is snatch up as much air as we can and soldier on. And the example that they're giving for this nation of how to do that and how to try to get positive outcomes while doing that. And Ben, normally we talk law on Thursday. Yesterday was Thanksgiving. It was Turkey Day, so I'm thankful for you to be here. But it's right for you to be here on Freedom Friday because these are freedom issues. But I do want to get a couple of minutes digging in on where we are on the law, because many people don't understand what the grand jury process is, what this prosecutor McCullough did and didn't do, and just how much discretion and subjectivity was used in this process where it really should have and could have gone another way. Can you just talk to us about, you know, the need for a special prosecutor and how we ended up where we are?
Absolutely, Monique, as I'm sure everybody who turned on their TV in the last 48 hours have heard me say that this process is broken. The process needs to be indicted, right? Because this process of having the local prosecutor sit in judgment of the local police department and the local police officers when they shoot young people of color, it's mostly little black and brown boys, is completely unfair to the citizens. It's unfair on every level when you think about it, because it's an inherent conflict of interest. And Attorney Pressley, being a very scholarly lawyer yourself, you don't even have to be a scholar to understand how unfair it is to the citizen. Because think about it, just in the most layman sense of the matter, you have the local prosecutor who has a symbiotic relationship with the local police department and the local police officers. And then he has cases with them where every day they're the arresting officers, they're the star witnesses. So he has to build up their credibility in all these cases. For instance, with this police officer, Darren Wilson, in many cases, he's his star witness. He's the arresting officer. So they got to make him seem as credible as they possibly can. But now, in the shooting of Michael Brown Jr., they have to determine whether he is to be indicted or not, which would certainly be a blow to his credibility. So in one sense, if he indicts him, he loses all these cases over here. And if he doesn't indict him, everybody's saying, well, did you not indict him because you didn't want to lose these other cases? And that is just the inherent conflict of interest. And then we see this transcript, Attorney Pressley, that everybody is reading of when he came in and was allowed to give this soliloquy, this speech for 4 hours to the jury about what happened, and they didn't challenge him on anything. They never cross-examined him, and everybody said, oh, Attorney Crump, you were wrong for saying a first-year law student would have did a better cross-examination on the killer of an unarmed person than this prosecutor's office did. Well, I know it was a little tongue-in-cheek, but look at it. He was never asked a tough question, not once. Nobody challenged this killer of an unarmed person. He didn't do a report as you were supposed to do. He didn't get challenged by no internal affairs or anybody. He came to the prosecutor. They didn't ask him a tough question. And, now he has all this time to look at everything on TV and stuff where he can formulate his answers. And even with that, when you read what he told the grand jury, it still doesn't add up. And it's still very troubling when he talks about the stereotypical things they say on all young black men, Monique. He had an aggressive look in his eye. He looked like a demon. That he came from a bad neighborhood. No police officer wanted to be in that neighborhood because they knew how people in that neighborhood acted. And, all these stereotypes. And I say to myself, but you're a police officer. You chose this job. You chose to protect and serve every community in your jurisdiction. So why are you mistreating the people in the Canfield community? Why are you profiling and prejudging them? And why didn't the prosecutor challenge you on any of these things? And it's so wrong because everybody talks about the constitutional rights of the police officer. Everybody talks about the due process of the police officer. And I said, and people wanted to have an exception with me on this, I said, I don't worry about the constitutional rights of the police officer. I don't worry about the due process of the police officer because I know without a shadow of a doubt the police is going to get all the consideration. He's going to get all the benefit of the doubt. Everybody knows he's going to get his complete constitutional rights, his complete due process of being innocent until proven guilty. But what I worry about is what about the due process of the little black and the little brown boys lying dead on the street?
Well, you're right, Ben, and it's not even just that he's going to get his due process rights. It's that, the system, the way that it is structured now, the deck is stacked in his favor. It's stacked in the favor of law enforcement, not just Darren Wilson, but the way the laws are drawn up, the use of force guidelines, the state law, the lack of any federal guidance. It's stacked in the favor of law enforcement. So when cases like this come around, and I've said it off of the air, but I'll say it on the air as a former government lawyer, I know that there's an investigation report somewhere in draft that will never see the light of day. I know that there was an interview of that officer somewhere that got stuck in that draft, and we're never going to see it. We're never going to know because that's the way that it's done. So we really have to look at, because there is, as much as we care about the Trayvon case, as much as we care about the Michael Brown case and the loss of lives there, we really have to pivot, don't we, Ben, and figure out that this is going to keep happening unless we do something about the system.
Absolutely. And Monique, you hit it right on the nail. And I know we're not talking to just all lawyers on the Breathing Through audience, we're talking to people,
That's
brothers
right.
and sisters.
That's right.
And so it has been often said to me by my elders that if you continue to do things the same way time after time and expect different results, then that's the definition for insanity.
That's right.
And if we are not insane, we know that our children deserve equal justice, and this system is never going to give them equal justice. It's going to keep yielding the same results, that no police officers are going to be held accountable. None of them are going to be convicted of killing our children if we continue with this same system in place. We need special prosecutors to be brought in. We need people who have no relationship with these police officers who can come and be independent arbiters of what happened. And what we really need is, as technology advances, Monique, and we believe it's there, that we need this proposal for this Michael Brown law to become reality, where every police officer in every city in America to be made to have to wear video body cameras, and every time they have an interaction with a citizen, that video camera better be on, and that way it will be transparent. We won't have to rely on witness memories or trying to guess at things. We can just see it for ourselves. And so hopefully and prayerfully that will become the legacy of Michael Brown Jr., that we now don't have to have these episodes we see in Ferguson play out over and over again.
Well, and I'm hoping that everybody's listening, because I try to give people action items. If you are in any way, shape, or form affected by this or just care about this cause, then you need to be writing your congressman and your senator. You need to be signing the petitions, need to be providing information about the Michael Brown law, and the body cams don't work if they're not on. So it has to be mandatory that they be on for every single interaction. And who cares if that cramps the style of law enforcement? You know, they're on duty the minute they put that uniform on, even when they don't have it on, even when they're off duty and carrying their service revolver, they are obligated to stand up for the people of the United States. So we want that passed. Ben, I'd like to see some race profiling federal mandates like the Lawyers Council is looking for, and some other things. But, you know, it's a lot of work to get done. It seems like we kind of have to all get on the same page to make that happen.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing, showing up at the city council meetings, because a lot of this is going to be locally enacted.
That's right.
You know, a lot of, and you were a government lawyer, so you understand the importance that your city councilman plays on these issues when they talk about what they're going to require from their police department, what their police chief is, they're going to require him to do. And so the technology is there. They are averaging this $200 or so a camera for every police officer. Obviously, a lot of that budgetary matters will have to be considered, but it's doable. As Victor Hugo said, nothing can stop an idea whose time has come, and this idea of having transparency with the police is here. They can't, you know, another big issue in Ferguson, Monique, was the fact that you had this force that only had 3 African-American officers out of 55. And
Right.
the Ferguson community was 70% African-American, and most of the officers did not live in Ferguson, so they would police our people in our community, then they would leave and go back to their community, and there was no relationship with the community. They were not vested in the community. And so all these issues become local issues with your city commissioner and your city council. So that's what we have to deal with as well. And believe you me, if you all keep going down there to that city commission, sooner or later they're going to have to hear you. They're going to have to listen to you.
Well, and that's exactly right, Ben, and I'm so glad that you said that, because you can even just look here in the District of Columbia or look in places in Chicago where people have gotten together and made their voices heard at the polls, putting the mayor in, putting council people in who are going to vote. And in D.C., we have the cameras, we've got body cameras, we've got all of these things that are being passed because people showed up and made their voices heard. So if you're listening and you think there's nothing you can do, you're wrong. When we have an election cycle like the last one, if only a third of us show up to even place a vote, then we don't have any hope when things like this happen, because the people who are in office do not represent our interests. But I want to touch one more thing before I let you go, Ben. There's been a lot of talk on the media about the looting and the criminals who went and destroyed property and burned down property and did those things that first night in Ferguson. But I'm not certain that there is as much talk about how that happened, in that there were thousands upon thousands of National Guard troops available, but they were not all released, and the ones who were in a particular part of town. Can you shed any light on that?
Well, the only thing that I do know is that this announcement came at 9 o'clock in the evening, which was, you have to question why they released this information at night when they know it's such a emotional issue, and they had the history of knowing what happened 3 months prior. So you don't understand why it wasn't more, I guess, they were not prepared for the response more when everybody had predicted that he was not going to be indicted because of this system that we have. And furthermore, they made sure certain parts of town were going to be well protected. And it's almost as if a lot of the Ferguson residents believe they don't care about our neighborhood. They didn't care what we did in our community. They just were going to make sure nothing was done in anybody else's community. But it speaks to a larger issue, too. We have been encouraging people who support Michael Brown. We shouldn't just make noise. We got to make a difference. We got to be constructive. We got to be, as Martin Luther King said, both dignified and disciplined, so we can address these very serious issues, not just with emotion, but with a clear mind to say, how are we going to make it better for our children? And so I think to everybody who is destroying and burning and stuff, it's a part of our responsibility too. It's part of the police, the National Guard, the government leaders. We're all in this boat together, and we got to recognize that some people are very hurt, some people are frustrated, and that, they feel they have no sense of power, they feel voiceless. And so if you continue to treat them as worthless, as they don't matter, then they're going to try to find ways to express that they are here, that they are citizens, and that they do want the government to hear their voices. And so we got to really, really work on that to say, government, you all can help them. Don't make them feel marginalized. Let's make them feel that they're part of the process. And I have to go back to the process just for a second, because this whole grand jury process, many of those people in Ferguson said from day one they did not trust this prosecutor, and they asked for the appointment of a special prosecutor. The governor and all the elected leaders kind of looked the other way when the people expressed with such passion that they needed to have a fair process that they can believe in, that it would be transparent. And then what do we get? We get this process. And I just want to go back to that for just a second, because as you know, Monique, any good lawyer, you look at what people who are against you or normally oppose your views have said as setting some kind of precedence where you can respond with their words while we're not getting equal justice, while you're changing the rules on us now. And we all watch Law and Order. We know prosecutors try to get convictions.
Right.
Where in this situation, the prosecutor, McCullough, never recommended any charges against the police officer. He made a new process where he just put all the evidence out there, that he wanted to be fair, and that's that, and the jurors, the grand jury, they can kind of figure it out for themselves. Well, in the other 28 years of his practice, if it's so fair, why wasn't he doing it for everybody else? Why change the rules when it comes to our children dead on the ground? And so I thought it was important, Monique, just to talk about what Justice Anton Scalia said about grand juries and have the audience try to apply this to what we've all just witnessed in Ferguson. On Monday, Prosecutor Bob McCullough announced that a grand jury had decided not to indict Darren Wilson, the officer who killed Michael Brown Jr. But that decision was the result of a process that turned the purpose of a grand jury on its head. Justice Anton Scalia, in 1992, the Supreme Court case of United States versus Williams, explained what the role of a grand jury has been for hundreds of years. It is the grand jury's function not to inquire upon what foundation the charge may be denied or otherwise to try the suspect's defenses, but only to examine upon what foundation the charge is made by the prosecutor. As a consequence, neither in this country nor in England has the suspect under investigation by the grand jury ever been thought to have the right or to have exculpatory evidence presented. Now, what all that means, and it says a lot, all the stuff in the law, in the case holding, but what it means is, you, as the prosecutor, you're not trying to offer evidence to exonerate a person. You're trying to simply say, based on these questions of factual dispute, do we have enough here to have probable cause? Probable cause is a very low standard. You see it every day in our neighborhood over and over again, whether the police say we got, he smelled the scent of marijuana in our car, or whether on a domestic violence call, you know, they call, the police can come and take an observation and say, he say, she say, well, I don't know, I'm still going to arrest you because it's probable cause. They didn't do any of that in this grand jury. They went and said, well, let's give him all the rights, all his defenses.
Well, Ben, you know, I mean, there isn't any question, I don't think, in the minds of those of us who have been trying these cases that Prosecutor McCullough completely abdicated his responsibilities with the grand jury process. We all know, and it's a rare occasion that I agree with Nancy Grace, but I saw the interview and I heard her on CNN before that, and everybody knows you can indict a pizza box. It is not a difficult process. McCullough had the choice to never take it to the grand jury. The way the process is now, he could have either charged Darren Wilson or not charged him and stood boldly and flat-footed and said, this is what I intend to do. But to go to the grand jury and then have this kitchen sink philosophy where he's just throwing 60 witnesses, thousands of pieces of evidence at 9 lay people, not 9 jurists, 9 lay people. I mean, of course the witnesses are contradictory. If you have 60 of them, I mean, he brought in people who probably saw from 5 blocks down and around the corner. It's just ridiculous. But what that comes to, though, Ben, is when we have things like this happening in our system, and they're happening everywhere around the country, until people understand enough of the process to say something about it and to advocate for change of laws, we're going to keep seeing it, because prosecutors in some cities, in some states, can do really whatever it is they want to do.
Yep. And you know, Monique, I guess to bring it all back home based on what you said about it's going to continue to happen in to our children in every city and community over and over again unless we do something about it, is there's a larger implication at play. It is rumored, we don't know, because the grand jury, they are under no requirement to give a breakdown of how the vote was. But it is believed to have been that they had 9 whites on the grand jury and 3 African Americans, and the 3 African Americans voted to indict, and the 9 Caucasian members of the grand jury voted to not indict. And so the real issue is they just don't see our children how we see our children. A lot of them see our children as the police officer who killed Michael Brown said in his statement to the grand jury that he had aggressive look in his eye. He looked like Hulk Hogan compared to me as a 5-year-old kid, that he looked like a demon. They just don't see our children as children. They see our children as this image that they have created in their mind, and we have to say, no, these are our children, and that we believe in our children just like you believe in your children. Are they perfect? No. But are your children perfect? No. So why hold our children to such a standard that when you kill them, if they're not perfect, then you say they must have deserved it? Trayvon Martin didn't deserve it. Michael Brown didn't deserve it. I'm sure the young man Tamir in Cleveland, 12 years old, didn't deserve it. And you keep scratching your head saying over and over again, when will they see our children as children too? And that is the larger implication of Michael Brown and Trayvon. We got to fight for our children. We got to stand up for our children. And if need be, we got to be willing to die for our children because they're our children. If we don't show them that we believe in them, then nobody else is going to show them.
Well, you're exactly right, Ben, and it is that wake-up call, where people were kind of standing on the sidelines and thinking that the civil rights movement was a thing of the past and love sees no color and et cetera, but our children keep dying, and 9 times out of 10, literally statistically, it's a white law enforcement official and it's a black or brown young person, many times now as Michael Brown and Trayvon, unarmed. And even with that jury, you're exactly right. The grand jury was impaneled way back in June, but it's still divided down racial lines. So I'm praying that everyone who's listening will do their part to advocate for racial sensitivity training, mandatory for every police officer, so that they're not looking at a white person, young man, who's got, a cocaine line on the table as a harmless kid, but they're looking at a black boy with cigarillos in his hand as Hulk Hogan or a demon. It is ridiculous. So I'm thankful for you, Ben, just for everything that you're doing in the fight. And, guys, you can follow Attorney Crump. He's at Attorney Crump on Instagram. He's at Attorney Crump on Twitter, so that you can know the latest about what's going on. Go to Parks and Crump, to their law firm, to figure out ways that you can support them in the work that they do. Ben, here at Breathe Through It, it's an open door. Anytime you guys need some information to get out, we will do our part. And I'm going to be writing some things and doing some more things because it matters. And the time is of the essence. This is urgent. It's a crisis until we do something to change it. So I just thank you for taking time out on your holiday weekend to come and talk to us, Ben. You're welcome here anytime.
Well, absolutely, Monique. And thank you so much for being not only a legal scholar, but also a voice for so many of us that don't have a voice, and such a clear, beautiful voice. God bless you for what you do. And I know as I go forward, I'm going to continue to tell everybody for the remainder of this week and days to come, just breathe through it and tell them about this wonderful program you have.
Thank you so much.